We had a little bit of a hiatus, and it is glad to be back. It is glad to be back. Why is my shouldn't be coming up that way? But anyway, what else is new? This is Dr. Gregory Clarke Sr., and yes, you're in the right place. This is the Comeback Conversations with Dr. Clarke. And once again, I thank God for the individuals, the members of the Comeback Collective Circle that are here in the building. And as we continue to flow forward, for some of you who know that I'm a New Yorker, I got on a Lakers shirt today with a very significant number. Let's see if I can tilt down a little bit. Number 24. And the reason for this, today is February 24th. And for those of us who are into, just not just current events culture, but just recognizing the impact that this gentleman whose shirt I'm representing today, he created a movement. And the movement wasn't not necessarily about himself. And on top of that, he was a major girl dad. He was a major, major girl dad. And on February 24th, we usually call it the Mamba Mamba Day. And the reason for that is his daughter, who is moving up in the ranks and probably would have been in college right now, schooling people, because, she had one of the greatest as a dad, showing her the ropes. When they transitioned in 2020, January 2020, the NBA, that's probably why the NBA has like most of their games on today, and they're going to have that moment, tribute and things of that nature. But, we remember this 224 because her number was 2. And eventually he started off as 8, but, he ended his career 24. He's the only person on the Lakers that has 2 numbers retired. And so, on this 24th day of February, just in case if anyone has some insight or just a thought about that, sometimes there's always a why. Like why am I doing the comeback conversations? Why are you here? You're here for ontological space so you can get more of your being. And on top of that, we sprinkle some financial literacy in there. And why is that so important? Because at times, especially in African American and Hispanic communities, even though we're getting better, we are most of the times positioned to not have this information, not to be privy to those things that can, possibly be wealth generating. At times they desire for us to stay as consumers. And so when you start moving in a space, and I'm not saying that consumerism is bad, but consumerism without any creation or ownership can't ultimately and keep you behind the 8 ball. And one of the things that we do here in the Comeback Collective Circle is to generate those conversations, generate that insight, and just generate a space where we have the opportunity to become, much more elevated and not stuck. And too many times, and yes, we're going to get into the teaching tonight as we're going to be dealing with index universal life insurance as we're starting to bring this arc of teachings and shares, to a close in regards to dealing with life insurance. And these shares and these teachings are not one-offs. That's why I encourage you, if you're not subscribing to my YouTube channel, definitely you're doing yourself a disservice, because repetition leads to education. You don't just hear something one time and just say, oh, I got it. And since I got it, that's, the end all be all. I had to hear it one time. Now, there have been times that people have told me that, I get things rather quickly, and I do. I'll be the first one to admit that. I do get things rather quickly. It's not an arduous task for me. But at the same time, I recognize the reason why I'm able to hold on to either the information or the skills that I have is that I'm willing to be in practice. And sometimes I fall flat on my face. Sometimes I'm in a space where I may not necessarily know everything that's going on or how everything is respectively flowing. And the reason why that's a good thing, when you're aspiring to be your best self and your greatest self, you have to be able to fall forward. What are you talking about, Dr. Clarke? If you're not willing to put yourself at risk, if you're not willing to sometimes navigate in the dark. If you're not willing to position yourselves in an unknown space and everything is just so easy, then you're not necessarily growing. See, the worst case scenario is that you can have the best product or best service that's not still being fully expressed. And we can hold on to the fact that I have this and I have that, or I've been an entrepreneur for this many years, and all the stories that we can muster up and create. But then there's still an action where it's okay, let's see the fruit. Because there was not that we're going biblical, but there was a man who was one of the wisest people, and he was outside the gate begging. Now everyone knew he had wisdom, so he had plethora of wisdom. But regardless of whatever the circumstance, they never really went into how he ended up in that particular condition. But it was just interesting to say that most of the individuals who passed by this man, knowing that he was probably in some level of destitute state, had a lot of knowledge. So you can have a lot of knowledge but no wisdom. See, knowledge and experience together gives you wisdom. And then once you have the wisdom, you start to navigate, oh, some of the things I did before, because I had that experience of saying, maybe that worked or maybe that didn't work. Then I know, says, wait a minute. Let me continue to move it. Let me continue to focus my energy on the things that do work. And so, at the time of this taping, which I'm happy we're doing this at this time, someone's having their first State of the Union for their second term. And as we've seen the havoc that has happened here in the United States economy, that's another reason why we're talking about financial literacy on this platform. Because for someone who, well, you can't really be mad at him because you would say that he lied, but actually he didn't lie. Because those of us who are New Yorkers have always said he never really paid his major bills. Filed for bankruptcy many, many times. Sometimes he stiffed his contractors and things, and all this stuff is documented. We're not even going to go back to the early 70s when he started taking over his father's real estate empire, and in Brooklyn and Queens was refusing to, they didn't look like him, he refused to rent to them. So we have all this documented. But yet and still, there are times that we allow for systemic things just to be the par for the course. Instead of recognizing, wait a minute, I don't desire to play that game. I don't desire to be in that realm where someone who is pretty much showing you what they think of you. And it's like you're expressing yourself in some level of fealty. I guess that's the reason why I know for this time around that I'm here on this plane, that God had it right to have me born in 1971. Because if I was born a little early, I don't know if I'd be here. I'd probably been marching with the Black Panther Party. I probably would have been, ostracized. Who knows? Who knows? But the reason why I say that, and that's one of the main reasons why I continue on in this path and will always continue to elevate and create these avenues for conversation, is that if we're not willing to share information, especially as a community, if we're not willing to say, wait a minute, we can do something a little bit better and we have to change or evolve. For some of you, you may not like the word change because hopefully I'm not coming off as harsh or mean or whatever story that you may have wrapped up in your mind, because that's your ontological being, whatever story you're wrapping up in your brain. But if we're not willing to share the information and then start to apply it, see, my thing is, I'm sharing this information, having these teachings, having these conversations here on this platform, because the main reason is that we have to apply it. And even if you don't necessarily apply it, then share it with someone who may just apply it, even if you don't apply it. And so if you're not willing to apply it or share the information, That's how our community as a whole, regardless of where you're at in the world, you know, gets stuck because we can be in a space where we're just looking at the, how should I say, the really outside space of what it is that we feel we're doing. And that's why at times you have to generate that joy from within you. Probably for some of you who came, well, some who came a little earlier, I always usually play some music, just and usually the music. And today was just about me having joy. There are times you're going to be the bad person. There are going to be times that in the narrative of people's insight, you know, it is what it is not what it's not. And you have to recognize, do you wallow in it or do you embrace it? When you embrace it, that means you push in. I think it was Miss Sandberg, who was the former CEO of Facebook before it became Meta. She wrote a New York Times bestseller called Lean In. And it was really geared to women in the marketplace, which we all can gain some of the insight from that book as well. But about leaning in is that there are times where, and she even expressed it, that you can't sit on your laurels just because you're a woman, or you expect this to happen because you're a woman. In that book, she was given reference points of saying that, wait a minute, at times when they would say that a woman who was stern or, very resolute in a matter, they would call her something else. But if it was a man, they would say, oh, he's being strong. He's being, he's given some sort of level of fortitude. And we have to recognize that. That's wrong. That's in its own form a level of misogyny. Because now we're not respecting the fact that, wait a minute, okay, can you willing at times allow your ego to become small? Or as I'm learning during this process and certain things evolving in my professional life, you start to recognize, you start to move away from this just being titled, which shows entitlement. I'm such and such. Okay, that's great. No, that's giving a hand clap of praise. But what does that really mean? What are the fruits? What are the real fruits? See, even as we're about to get into this share today, um, about index universal life, and depending upon how it flows, might get through the whole slide, or we may only get through half of it, and we'll come back and complete the next on the next edition, depending upon how people are getting it. Because these are some of the, how should I say, products that usually certain people of a certain worth, a high levelness of moving in some sort of financial herewithal, allow themselves to navigate in. And the reason why I keep presenting these possibilities to us is that I believe in my heart already. See, you have to believe that you're a millionaire or a billionaire ahead of time. You can't wait till the million is in your hand. You can't say that you're a millionaire and move like a millionaire once you have the million. Because if you do what you do before you have the million and you're attempting to generate in that respective space, once that money does appear in your hand, it's going to disappear. And if it disappears, then who are you going to blame? Who are you going to get angry with? Who are you going to get disturbed by? Is it everything outside of you? That's the reason why the money disappeared. So as we start to get into this conversation today about Indux Universal Life, this was almost like a reintroduction for some, a reintroduction for others. Once again, I'm Dr. Gregory Clarke Sr. I appreciate the members of the Comeback Collective Circle, far and wide. As always, I always encourage you, if you missed the teaching, Make sure that you are a subscriber of mine on YouTube. And if you're a person who does content as well, I have no problem following you. You got something to share? Hey, I will peruse on your page and subscriber for subscriber. I have no problem with that. Because if you have something that's talking about, now I know there's times that we need that stuff that allows us to decompress. But if you're not necessarily in the headspace where you're at a wealthy or affluent, then at times you sometimes have to check yourself. And checking yourself is not about checking someone or you're mad at someone. No, just check on yourself. Check on yourself. Start to really assess your path. And that's why with the realms of technology and the things that we have access to, you have so many possibilities to be as powerful as you so choose to be, as you so choose to be. And that's part of your ontological and your development and your framework. Because a lot of things systemically are attempting to keep us in a minimized space. And some of it is self-inflicting. Now, when you can, as I sometimes have said to my wife, when you put on your big drawers or big underwear and look yourself in the mirror, it's not so much about not receiving assistance. Assistance is not the issue. But it does become a space where that assistance can become persistence. And that's not beneficial. There's no returning that. And yes, everything has to generate some level of return. ROI, return on investment. That's why when people lend money, they expect their money back. When you have a credit card and you use a credit card, they're expecting their finances back. Now, if you pay it off within the time frame and you use the credit card, the OPM, all of a sudden, you owe no interest. If you're in a space where all of a sudden you feel that you can't pay it off all originally, are you working within a time frame and a plan and sticking to that? Because that's discipline. Are you disciplined enough? See, that's where we have to become much more mindful, even as a people. Are you disciplined enough to say, okay, I know me. You know you are a spender, even though you shouldn't be a spender, especially part of the comeback collective circle. You should be someone who's circulating your funds, because now you're being mindful. And that's why I prefaced part of this conversation, this initial conversation, before we get into the main part of the teaching, was that, it's okay. You like nice things? I'll be the first one to tell you, go get it. I love nice things. I love things of quality. But I noticed one thing, and this may go back to when I initially started coming online, when I was in one dispensation about the virtual mankind, a man cave. I won't even go mankind, man cave. And I remember those first couple of times I was getting my feet wet and I was jacking up and I was screwing up, and I know I was screwing up, but it was good because I was falling forward. And we dealt with the book, The Millionaire Next Door. Now, this book is a book from the mid 1990s. So, $1 million is not what it used to be. But the principles in the book are timeless. And why did I say those principles are timeless? Because you start to see how certain communities are not necessarily predisposed, but are conditioned to move in a particular way. And if you get an opportunity, especially you can find that book on PDF, that's easy to find, Millionaire Next Door. So we're not here to promote the book, but we're here to promote wisdom. Because there have been times where I had to file for bankruptcy. There were times that I had to get my credit fixed. There were times that I had to recognize that my behavioral patterns were off. Couldn't blame my wife, couldn't point my finger at this one. No, after a while, when you become real with yourself, you start to recognize, like, wait a minute, this pattern doesn't work. And looking good can kill you. And I'm not talking about figuratively, but looking good can kill you. Because you can position yourself in a space where you're attempting to look good, and next you know, your money's still flying all around you, and it's like, wait a minute, you got a bunch of things and nothing to show for it, but things. But then when you become real with yourself and you become reconciled, and you start to recognize your joy is not generated by the things or even the attributes or even sometimes the applause. But when you start to recognize that joy that you can have, and that was one of the songs I played in the preamble to tonight. When you have that joy, you start to recognize you don't stop aspiring. You don't stop making the moves that can build something, because those are the things, that's when you're moving in a disciplined manner. And it's not about that you're not throwing stuff at the wall and attempting to see what sticks. That's good. That's part of the falling forward. But then after a while, you still have to have enough discipline to be like, wait a minute, you're going to fall forward, but you're not going to fall off the cliff. That's a big difference. And too many times we can fall off the cliff financially or mentally or spiritually. Then it's like, oh my God, I'm falling off the cliff. Whoa, stop. There's a point of falling forward or leaning in. How'd you fall off the cliff? And we can't talk about faith. We can't talk about the recognizance of some level of spirituality. We gotta stop. Wait. What in your mind caused you to fall off a cliff? There's a point of falling forward. Oh, I got to scrape my knee. I got me a little boo-boo, whatever. Go get the Band-Aid. What did you learn from that? Okay, I won't do that. And this, that, and the third. Okay, you learned the lesson. Now, the scar may be there as a reminder, but you learned the lesson. You fell. You got back up. But you can't never position yourself where you're falling off the cliff. And then I was like, oh my God. See, now Donald Trump, there are plenty of times he fell off the cliff. But he did it in a realm, in a way where some of you may not like it, but this was part of his business acumen. Oh, I have too many debts and not enough resources. Let me file bankruptcy. I'm going to use the laws of the United States that are there. It's not that he created the law. It's not that he circumvented the law. It's not that he even broke the law. He figured out by having some smart people around, like, yo, okay, you owe this, and you only have this. Here's a mechanism that you can utilize to reorganize. Now, is this something that's supposed to be, you can do that every 7 years? I don't advise that. I don't advise that at all. You don't use that as a tone of saying, oh, that gives me carte blanche to go out there and spend or circulate or whatever it is that you call it, and not take care of the responsibility. It says, oh, I got an out. It doesn't pull you away from the responsibilities, because even then you got to go through, I've been through bankruptcy. You got to go through all those parameters, and you're starting to see how you have to rebuild yourself. You start to recognize you have a certain new regard and level of respect when it comes to your resources and how the game is played. And when you get that, that is an eye-opening moment where you say, oh, no, this gives me an opportunity. That's why when I worked on my doctorate degree, that was what I was focused upon, about financial literacy, especially for Black and brown people. And yes, I'm a graduate of Virginia Union University for my doctorate. Undergrad, I'm a proud Bronxite, Lehman College, CUNY. There's nothing wrong with that. Excellent education. Someone's going for social work. That's one of the best. That's one of the best affordable colleges if you're going looking for a master's in social work. So I have no problem, talking about my alma mater. Let's see. Thank you, Nicole. I love the people around me. You gotta respect it. You gotta respect it. So as I'm getting off that I forgot what they used to call it in Harlem, where I guess on Sundays, remember they had a scene like that in Malcolm X, where I guess on the corners, that people preach. I'm coming down off of that. We're gonna get into the teaching. So once again, I appreciate all the members of the Comeback Collective Circle who are here.